Imagine you have to eat the moment you wake up. Not like, I need my morning coffee, but if you don't shove a donut in your face within 8 minutes of opening your eyes, your heart stops and you die. That is the daily reality for the hummingbird. But day is only half the problem. The sun goes down, the flowers close, and this little bird is faced with a 12-hour fast it physically cannot survive. So what does it do? It literally cheats death by dying a little bit. I know, it sounds like some edgy teen fiction, but stick with me, because this tiny glittering yard ornament is actually nature's most stressed out gig worker, trapped on a permanent low battery warning. Let's look at the specs. A hummingbird has the highest mass-specific metabolic rate of any warm-blooded animal on Earth. Their metabolism is about 77 times faster than a human's. To put that into perspective, if you had this bird's metabolism, you would need to eat roughly 155,000 calories a day. That is about 300 cheeseburgers, just to keep your lights on. And because they are so desperately small, some, like the bee hummingbird, weigh less than a single US penny. They have absolutely nowhere to store reserve fuel. They are effectively a Formula One engine bolted to a bottle cap. And what an engine it is! When hovering, a hummingbird's heart rate can exceed 1,260 beats per minute. That is 20 beats every single second. Their flight muscles make up roughly a third of their entire body weight. And those muscles are packed with mitochondria, the powerhouses of the cell, up to 35% by volume. This absurd cellular architecture lets them pull off aerodynamic moves no other bird can do, like true backward and upside-down flight. To fuel this madness, a hummingbird must consume up to 2 to 3 times its own body weight in nectar every single day. They visit hundreds of flowers to do this. For about 180 years, science textbooks confidently stated that hummingbirds drank this nectar using capillary action, basically treating their tongue like a passive paper towel soaking up liquid. Wrong. In 2011, researchers discovered their tongues are actually split at the tip and function as highly elastic fluid traps. When the tongue retracts, it snaps shut, squeezing the nectar out like a mechanical micropump up to 20 times a second. And when that tongue is fully retracted, it literally wraps around the back of the bird's skull, storing itself inside the head like a fleshy tape measure. But here's the most insane part about their diet. When they drink that sugar, it does not go to a biological savings account. A hummingbird burns the sugar it just drank roughly 15 minutes later to power the wing beat happening right now. They are living biological paycheck to paycheck. Because of this, their blood sugar routinely sits around 300 milligrams per deciliter. In a human, that level of blood sugar would put you in the emergency room. For a hummingbird, it's just Tuesday. In fact, because birds evolutionarily lost the standard sweet taste receptor gene, hummingbirds actually rebuilt their ability to taste sugar by mutating their umami receptor. They are literally tasting pure sugar through their meat sensor. So, they are burning fuel almost instantly, and if they go just 2 to 4 hours without food during the day, they can starve to death. Which brings us to the ultimate villain of our story, the setting sun. Every night the flowers close and the world goes dark for 8 to 12 hours. Because hummingbirds are so tiny, their surface area to volume ratio is a thermodynamic nightmare. They bleed body heat. Just existing in the dark causes them to lose around 10% of their body mass overnight. That is the equivalent of an average human waking up having lost 18 pounds in their sleep. Left to function normally, a hummingbird would be totally dead before midnight. So how do they survive? At dusk, they do a little biological math. They assess their fat reserves, and if they don't have enough to run their internal heater all night, they pull the plug. They enter a state called torpor. Torpor is essentially controlled hypothermia. It is an extreme, emergency battery saver mode. Their metabolic rate crashes by up to 95%. Their heart rate drops from over 1,200 beats per minute all the way down to 50. Their breathing slows to a crawl, sometimes pausing entirely. Normally, a hummingbird's body temperature sits around 40 degrees Celsius. But during torpor, they let themselves match the cold air around them. High in the Andes Mountains, researchers recorded a black metal-tail hummingbird in torpor with a body temperature of 3.26 degrees Celsius. That is roughly 38 degrees Fahrenheit, practically refrigerator temperature, inside a living bird. It is the lowest body temperature ever recorded for any non-hibernating bird or mammal on the planet. In this state, they are completely unresponsive. You could pick one up in your hand, and it would feel cold and dead, maybe even hanging completely upside down from a branch. This is why wildlife centers constantly get calls from people who think they've found a dead hummingbird. They haven't. The bird is just aggressively saving money. They even make a wheezing sound while in this state, violently forcing air into their lungs, which led to a viral internet video of a quote-unquote snoring hummingbird. It isn't snoring, it's the sound of a desperate biological engine trying to keep the pilot light on. Waking up from this daily mini-death is agonizing. To reboot its system before dawn, the bird has to violently shiver its flight muscles for 20 to 60 minutes. It warms up about 1 degree per minute, burning its absolute last fumes of energy just to get hot enough to fly to the nearest flower. It's a massive gamble. If it gets too cold overnight, or if the fat reserves run out before the system fully boots up, it just doesn't wake up. They flirt with the line of no return every single night. Now, hearing all this, you might be thinking this fragile, shivering little sugar addict is a delicate flower of a creature. Absolutely not. They are hyper-aggressive little war criminals. The Aztec people actually made a hummingbird their god of war and the sun, known as Huitzilopochtli. They believed fallen warriors were reincarnated as hummingbirds. And honestly, the Aztecs nailed it. Hummingbirds routinely fight off insects, other birds, and even hawks that wander near their food. A 3-gram Anna's hummingbird has been observed dive bombing and driving away a massive red-tailed hawk. Some species, like male long-billed hermits, have evolved sharpened, dagger-like bill tips that they use to literally stab rival males in the throat during territory disputes. They have turned their faces into fencing swords. And when male Anna's hummingbirds want to impress a female, they fly high into the air and pull off a courtship dive reaching speeds of 385 body lengths per second. That is faster per body length than a fighter jet. When they pull up at the bottom of the dive, they experience 10 G-forces. Human fighter pilots usually black out around 9 Gs. The bird just does it to get a date. Oh, and that loud, impressive chirp you hear at the bottom of the dive, it doesn't come from their throat. It is produced by air fluttering their specialized outer tail feathers. Yes, their signature pickup line is effectively a butt whistle. But if you want to know just how far these animals can push the laws of physics, look at the ruby-throated hummingbird. Every year, these birds migrate across the Gulf of Mexico. That is a distance of roughly 500 miles of open ocean. No land, no flowers to feed on, no branches to sleep on. Before they leave, they gorge themselves, doubling their body mass in pure fat. Then they launch. They fly non-stop for 18 to 24 hours straight. They lose up to 50% of their body mass in a single flight. It is the equivalent of a human running 20 consecutive marathons while burning off an entire person's weight in fat, without stopping for a sip of water. And here is the punchline to all of this extreme performance. Hummingbirds belong to a scientific order called Apodiformes. In Latin, that translates to without feet. It's a bit of a dramatic roast by early scientists, but it's fundamentally true. Their legs are so underdeveloped that hummingbirds cannot walk. They cannot hop. The most they can do is awkwardly shuffle sideways along a twig. They mastered the sky. They cheat death every night. They cross oceans without stopping, but they can't walk across a patio table. Common sense in biology tells you that any animal burning this hot, living this fast, and teetering on the edge of starvation every day should burn out quickly. It's called rate of living theory. Small, fast animals die young. A mouse running a much gentler metabolism might live 2 or 3 years. But hummingbirds? They break that rule too. A broad-tailed hummingbird holds the longevity record at over 12 years old. Ruby-throated hummingbirds regularly exceed 9 years. They are a creature that treats thermodynamics like a gentle suggestion, outlives its peers, and wakes up every morning angry, starving, and ready to fight a hawk. So next time you see one hovering at a backyard feeder, know that you are not looking at a delicate garden fairy. You are looking at an apex survivor that just rebooted from a mini-death.